joined the meeting. That's part of this. And I'm asking for a motion to move in camera. Councillor Burrell and Councillor Boushy, you're going to move and second those motions, and then we'll be back at 1 o'clock for the public session.
I move that Sarnia City Council move into closed session pursuant to sections 2392 B, D, K, and F of the Municipal Act to consider the following matters: to receive information about pending negotiations with respect to the renewal of an agreement, the CAO employment contract, and to give consideration to negotiations regarding an offer of a donation from a third party.
And thank you, Councillor Burrell. Councillor Boushy, you're seconding that. All in favor? We'll see you in 30 seconds. Thank you, everyone.
Audio check 1 2. Audio check 1 2.
Just waiting for our moderator here. Andrew, can we move forward, please?
Yeah, we're ready to go live now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being on the call and on the council meeting. And with that, I open with the territory acknowledgement. In the spirit of peace and friendship, we honor and respect of the Three Fires Confederacy, on whose traditional territory we are gathered. The city of Sarnia has resolved to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And I would ask you, if you can, to please stand for O Canada, and then for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you, everyone. Can I have councillors move the report on the closed meeting?
Yes, Your Worship. I move that council rise and report.
I report to you that we've received information with respect to the renewal of an agreement. That I can report to you we gave direction to staff with respect to the sale employment contract, and that we also gave direction to staff with respect to an offer of a donation from a third party. And that's my report to you.
I move that Sarnia City Council adopt the report of a closed meeting.
All in favor? That's done. That's unanimous. Are there any disclosures of conflict of interest? Councillor Dennis, Councillor Burrell.
I have a conflict with agenda item M, as I am named in it.
Thank you. Councillor Burrell.
Yes, with regard to item F, as in Fox, it has to do with the reconstruction of Nelson Street, and my office is joins Nelson Street.
Thank you for that. And with that, moving into the public meeting that's scheduled, and that is related to rezoning application at a number of addresses on the 800 block of Exmouth Street. And I'm going to turn to the staff for their presentation, and then go to the applicants, and then go to anyone who has other comments on the application. So please go ahead, Ms. Grant.
Good afternoon, everyone. The city is in receipt of an application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to permit a 6-story apartment building with minor institutional use and 6 standalone townhouse units on lands known as 831 and 837 to 41 Exmouth Street, and a numbered parcel, and 779 Melrose Avenue. A total of 62 dwelling units will be constructed. The manor institution use will occupy an area of approximately 92.16 meters squared at grade level to provide in-person support services for the residents. 38 parking spaces are proposed to be provided. This proposal will be developed as an affordable housing project. For clarification, the county involvement at this point has been limited to the provision of seed funding for the planning applications only. No decision has been made by the applicants regarding the future involvement of the county. Furthermore, the proposed residential redevelopment does not include an emergency shelter, crisis care facility, or transitional housing. The subject site comprises an amalgamation of 4 separate parcels. As configured, it is an irregular shaped lot, and it is approximately 0.64 hectares or 1.58 acres in size. The subject site is located on the south side of Exmouth Street at the intersection of Exmouth Street and Melrose Avenue. It is approximately 275 meters from the Highway 402 Indian Way North Exchange. The application and the supporting documents were circulated to all applicable agencies and the city divisions for their review and comments, and reviewed against all applicable land use policies. No concerns were raised from the circulation. A notice of complete application and public meeting were sent to property owners within 120 meters of the subject site on January 23, 2025. The notice was also published in the Sarnia Observer on the same date. A billboard type notice sign was placed on each parcel. Additionally, the supporting documents were posted on Speak Up Sarnia for the public to have access to those. Comments were received from the public objecting to the proposal on grounds of potential negative impact on surrounding property values and potential impacts arising from the proposed reduction in parking spaces. Comments were also received offering support for the development on the condition that it will be developed solely for affordable housing units with no emergency or transitional services component. With respect to parking, the applicants are requesting reduction in parking space to a rate of 0.6 space per dwelling unit, as opposed to 1.5 space per dwelling unit as required in the bylaw. The subject site, we note, is located in the Affordable Care CIP area, which allows for parking space reductions to a rate of 0.75 space per dwelling unit. At that rate, the parking space deficiency will be 9 spaces per unit. Planning staff are recommending 41 spaces for the entire proposal, which will account for the residential and the institutional uses. No changes were recommended to the application on account of the comments that were received. If approved, a site plan application will be required to implement the proposal, as well as the sites will be required to be consolidated into one lot before the issuance of building permit. In conclusion, the subject site is located in a fully serviced area close to transit, community facilities, open space, and locally serving institutional and commercial areas. It is compatible with the scale, density, and character of the existing neighborhood. Planning staff support the proposal and recommended that it be implemented through an official plan and then as an exemption, with a new site-specific affordable housing policy. Again, this proposal is consistent with the PPS. It conforms to the county and official plans. It constitutes good planning and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Any questions from council? Councillor Vandenberg?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you, Ms. Grant. Development charges. I noted that the Good Shepherd is a local nonprofit organization. So in their bill, are we going to be charging them the full development charges as we would anybody else?
I'm going to ask our building staff to address that question, please.
Yeah, I can take that one, Your Worship. So the Development Charges Act does include exemptions for certain type of development that is reviewed at the time that a building permit is issued, and that is when development charges are calculated. So we will know that answer more specifically when a building permit is submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis, Councillor McRoberts, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. Maybe Mr. Hyatt can answer this. Do they pay property taxes?
I don't know the answer to that right now, Your Worship. I'm not sure if our finance or our treasurer may have the answer to that.
I can definitely look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor McRoberts, then Councillor Gillis.
Thank you through the
Councillor
chair.
Burrell.
I've received, I'm sure we all have, multiple emails and questions about not wanting these builds to happen here because of what's happening at Lower Lee right now. As 5 of us sit out at the county, this is affordable housing, not supportive housing, as I understand. So the individuals that are staying at a shelter are not necessarily the ones that are on the by name list that are going to be coming in here. So I do understand it's not going to be folks that can buy a condo, but the affordable housing is maybe a different set of clients that will be living in this. So I just wanted that to be said to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I got Councillor Gillis and I got Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for bringing that up, Councillor McRoberts. I was going to also mention that I had received a petition. I think there were 258 names that I'd seen on it. And so to the point, Ms. Grant is saying that there has been no objections. There obviously has been objections. A few talking about the existing neighborhood, and I'm always going to look at the neighborhood and what is being asked of it to bear. And I've heard from many people who are quite upset that this building, the buildings, I should say, are interjecting something that's new and different into this neighborhood. And they certainly have been suffering a long time for a variety of reasons. But this it's like, what's happening? The other thing that I was really interested in was the lack of parking, from going from 96 parking spaces down to 38. That's unbelievable to me. And I know that the last time we had another group, another project come forward, it was 0.75. And for me, 0.75 is like the lowest I would ever go. So I have great concerns about the parking specifically, and looking at the fact that because it's an affordable housing, there are going to be many people who need many different needs being brought to them. And I am always concerned that there's not enough parking here to suffice that needs. My last question is on the actual infrastructure of itself. The way I read what was going to be in, how it was going to be built, low barrier, et cetera, was lovely, but it's 6 stories with 2 stairwells on either side. There was no mention that is there an elevator? Because if you don't have an elevator in this building, that is a no-go for me as well. So I put that back to you, Ms. Grant, if you have that information, but I am struggling with the parking, I'll be honest.
Okay, I think to answer that question would be probably more appropriate to the delegation that's next.
Okay.
The proponents, and we'll bring it up when we go to them. Who else? Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but doesn't appear to be anybody more against parking spots than the recommendations coming from our own planning department. It seems to be continuous. Every program, every building that comes forward, the requirements in our bylaws are just run roughshod over for all these things. Now, you know, we do have, and they'll say, well, it's not a transit. Well, transit is good. We do have reasonably good transit in the city of Sarnia if you're going east-west. But if you're going north-south, not so much. So I don't know whether you can always say that our transit is sufficient to eliminate as many parking spots as here. And the fact that people still use cars, even if they are not, they don't necessarily own cars. Quite often they borrow cars, or people with cars come to visit them, and and people come in cars to support them in other ways. And it just seems to me that we continually have the deficiencies of parking, and the corollary of that is, it doesn't appear as though the buildings get built. So I don't know whether that is a cause of a lot of these buildings that because we've approved quite a number of buildings over the last 4 or 5 years, and not many get up. So I'm not so sure this weakening the parking as a concession is not maybe hurting more than helping.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor White, to the staff before I go to the delegations?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bradley. Won't necessarily get too much into the debate here, other than to suggest that, again, the trend towards less parking is, especially in this case, is geared towards the market that the proponents are seeking to excuse me, are seeking to accommodate. So I think it's more than reasonable, and maybe I would just ask staff to comment on the parking issue specifically, because it does seem like it's a constant concern. You know, I've got a kid that lives in Toronto now, and there's no parking in a lot of accommodations around various cities. And I know we're not Toronto, but if we look at this neighborhood as a microcosm of a place where people can live, work, shop, exist, socialize, I think it's reasonable to assume that people can survive reasonably comfortably without owning a car, especially if they can't afford one. So if staff can just comment on the parking, I would appreciate that.
So with respect to the parking, City Council has recently approved a community improvement plan that supports reduction in parking spaces that was alluded to earlier. In this case, the uses are intended for folks that are within a certain income group. It's anticipated based on sort of the history of working with these communities that they tend to not have access to vehicles, therefore not requiring the parking space. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, it's a balance between managing the provision of the housing units and the provision of parking spaces with respect to the cost. So when you look at those factors, as well as the fact that the area is well served by transit, that allows folks to get to and from either work or school or for entertainment purposes. On balance, it does appear that this recommended reduction is adequate to support the proposal. I do know that the applicants did submit a parking review, and that parking review also supports the proposal based on the agreed number, the required number of spaces. So we're looking at all of that in consideration. Planning staff supports the proposal on those bases.
Thank you. Thank you. I see no further questions, so thank you. I'm going to call on the Monteith Brown planners to come forward, please, who are representing the applicant.
He'll be joining now.
Okay, Mr. McGuffin, Ms. Palach, if you want to go ahead. You did hear one question from Councillor Gillis about the issue of elevators in the building. And if you can move forward with your presentation, then take some questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. Jay McGuffin, Monteith Brown Planning, and sorry, I apologize. I'm working from the car, and I assume Ms. Paluch is on the line as well.
She is.
We did ask a request of the city if Miles Vanny, the proponent from Into the Good Shepherd, would also be available.
He's on the call, Mr. McGuffin.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to start, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Paluch. I'd like to thank staff for their recommendation. Just in general, we have reviewed the report and we support the recommendations as put forward by city staff. I guess I'll start to speak off. I'll let Ms. Paluch speak to the question of the elevator and Mr. Vanny, but I'll just speak a little bit more to the planner's submission on parking. As part of the submission that we provided, we had reached out to the county who delivers the affordable housing through their programming to get some information on some of the other affordable housing projects in the city. They provided us with 6 examples. One of those examples provides 1 space per unit, one provides 0.77 per unit. All of the rest of them are 0.46, 0.41, 0.36, and 0.49 spaces per unit. Parking is one of the biggest challenges to the provision of affordable housing in Ontario, and there's been a provincial-wide movement to reduce parking requirements across the province when it comes to affordable housing provision. There's also been a tremendous push in parking reductions across the province to prevent the unnecessary consumption of lands for asphalt for parking that gets unconsumed. We do strongly believe from our professional planning perspective that the proposed reduction at 0.66 spaces as articulated by the city staff is appropriate. That's actually higher than what we had requested. And we have reviewed, we have discussed that with city staff, and we do support that reduction. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Ms. Paluch and Mr. Vanny to respond to the other 2 questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everyone. Regarding the question about elevators, I can confirm that there is an elevator in the apartment building, as Miles had confirmed for me. And I want to echo what Jay said, that we are in agreement with staff's recommendation for approval, and we're available for any questions from council or from the public. And I believe I'll turn it over to Miles as well, as he wanted to say a few things before we get started on questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity to address the rezoning application that will enable the Inn to move forward with the proposed affordable housing project. This project is really an attempt to correct the wrongs and neglect that has taken place over the last 25 years, kind of paying for the sins of our fathers, I think is the expression. 25 years ago, both federal and provincial governments stopped funding affordable housing projects, even as our population grew and the number of households living below the poverty line increased. The provincial government 20 years ago slashed social assistance rates that have never caught up to the current living costs and inflation. So a person living on a disability pension now only receives $1,100 a month, which is less than the average 1-bedroom apartment now goes for. And the elimination of rent caps has seen the doubling of rental costs in our community. Property owners can now raise the rents between tenancies without limit. So we see situations like an apartment on Colburn Street that rented for $695 8 years ago is now renting for $1,195. It's not costing $500 a month more to operate that apartment. It's just what they can charge now with the rent controls removed. All of this has led to a crisis of a lack of affordable housing in our community and every community. And this project is geared to low-income, working poor, seniors, and those on disability pensions. We understand the concerns of the neighbors regarding the current use of the property, an emergency shelter, and daytime homeless resource center. And we fully recognize that some of the individuals using these services and others who may hang around the neighborhood have created issues with their behaviors, and we have worked with the county to try to mitigate the impact of these clients. We appreciate the difficulties this has caused some neighbors, and we appreciate those that have expressed support and have dropped off donations of clothing, baking, and hygiene items. We would have reaffirmed that, as we shared at the neighbor consultation we held in July, that those folks currently using the services at the overflow shelter need deep counseling and supports for mental health and addictions, more in line with the type of programs and residency supports that the county and Indwell are working to bring to this community. So this project is geared to the demographic of low income, working poor, seniors, and those on disability pensions. The lack of affordable housing is a need in every community and requires community solutions to help solve the neglect towards housing over the past years. So the Inn is working, and we've worked in our community for 45 years to help address the needs of the working poor and low income in our community. And we see this as an opportunity to further our mission and to help be a part of the housing solution in our community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Kellner, Councillor White, Councillor Gillis, Councillor Burrell.
Through the chair to Executive Director Vanny, I think I need to just contemplate, because this council just a month or two ago decided to move a certain direction about not having encampments, and it feels like I am sitting here with an option to choose affordable housing, and we are caught in a really tricky situation where choosing to not go this direction is also, I don't even know how to word it, Mr. Vanny, but we are caught in a catch-22 because we are trying to end homelessness, and we are also hearing voices from neighborhoods, and I really feel like we are in a position where we don't like either of the answers, because it's, on one sense, it's going to disrupt neighborhoods, and at the same point, encampments are just going to emerge. We think that because we solve Rainbow Park, that these places don't exist throughout this city. They do. So I just want to challenge council and challenge the city on, we have to have a way forward. We have to figure out, and so my question is essentially, have you wrestled with this? Because I think this is a big thing, and I know you have, and like, what are the other options? What are the other opportunities if this doesn't go through the way you're proposing? Like, I don't know. I guess that's what my question is. Thank you.
Worship.
I believe, Mr. Vanny, it's to you.
Yes, thank you. It is a significant challenge, finding locations, finding places that we can provide affordable housing. Certainly the situation the last few years has increased the dimension of homelessness, and I see a light at the end of the tunnel coming in terms of the new Heart Hub funding that the county has received. That's going to address the addictions and the mental health issues that are in our community, but there's still the affordability of housing that so many individuals are facing, and we see this as an opportunity to address that. And you know, we were blessed when the church came forward and offered property to us to be able to do that, because it really is a prime location in terms of access, walking access to grocery stores, to banks, to community centers. So it really is an opportune location for being able to provide a good, affordable, decent living for folks.
Thank you. I have Councillor White, and then I have Councillor Burrell and Councillor Boushy.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Bradley. And thank you, Mr. Vanny, for being here and for your tireless work towards justice for all people. And thank you on this issue in particular. And you made the point that your organization, your volunteers, your staff, you personally, and those that support the Inn have been doing an unbelievable job at filling the gap where, quite frankly, our governments have failed us as a society. And again, I'm going to point the finger back. The people that vote for those policies and those who implement those policies have failed our most vulnerable people. And I want to be sure that I give you the opportunity again to reiterate the fact that we're not, sorry, there was some interference there. Was somebody else trying to speak?
No, you've got the floor.
Okay. There's this conception, I think, a misconception out there that the folks who are poor are drug addicts and mentally unwell in every way imaginable. And I want to be sure that you made the point already that this is not supportive housing, and I want to be sure that we're not conflating issues here. We have thousands of people that need housing like this. And they're folks who've worked their whole lives who are retired and suddenly find themselves unable to afford rent. And in their senior years, have to live, in some cases, with the indignity of finding roommates who are not compatible with them because they're widowed, they're simply unable to afford, their families have moved away, whatever. They are people who work, full-time, more than full-time, and still can't afford market rents, etc. I just want to be sure I give you that opportunity to verify that that's in fact what we're talking about. And in fact, even to the parking issue being a concern as to whether or not this is going to be built, I'm assuming you've done your market research. So can you just verify for me again who the market is for these units? And please, assure me and us that you're confident you have more than enough people to fill these units.
Thank you, Councillor White. Yes, primarily, when we look at the population, the community that we serve here in Sarnia, the homeless population, the heavily addicted, the mental health issues, is only about 5% of the folks that we serve. We serve thousands that are working. They're working 2 or 3 part-time jobs, these families, to be able to make ends meet. And when they meet a bumpy road in life, like back to school supplies or some food for the end of the month, or somebody gets sick, that's the vast majority of the population we're serving, and that's who we're addressing the affordability of housing to. We need thousands of affordable housing units in our community to catch up, and this is a start on that.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Burrell, Councillor Boushy, and then Councillor Gillis. And
yes, thank you, Your Worship. My question is to Mr. McGuffin. He had indicated, I heard him say that he thought that the parking was at roughly 60% of what it should be, but my numbers are much, much lower than that. My understanding is there should be 90-some parking spots if we go by the bylaw, and the actual amount is about 30-some, and then there's another 3-4 business related to something that's going on as well. So I don't think we're anywhere near the 60% that you're talking about, unless you have information I don't have.
Mr. McGuffin, can you respond?
To clarify, the proposed ratio of parking is 0.66 spaces per unit. So that's the parking provision. So for every unit, 0.66 of a space is provided.
Okay, anything further on that issue? I'm not seeing anything. I've got Councillor Boushy and Councillor Gillis.
Just one comment. I'm surprised, very surprised how it took us so long to discuss the issues on this application. Now I move right now will be approved.
Councillor Boushy, I can't accept that because we still have to, we have another delegation at least, so I have to wait till after I've heard from the delegations, and I'll move council into motions, if you don't mind waiting. I've got Councillor Gillis, and we'll move on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Worship. So getting back to the actual physical plant, What will the price of apartments be, to your point, Mr. Vanny? Because 1,000 plus seems to be the going rate for the bare bones. However, we do know, and to your point, that there has been no social housing built in 20 to 25 years. I did read your report, and you are quite accurate. So that aside, we're talking about the actual planning. So how much are these going to be, and when will you be able to put a shovel in the ground? If all goes well, all goes in the direction you want it to, when will you get a shovel in the ground?
Thank you, Councillor Gillis. In terms of the pricing, we're applying for affordable housing funding from Canada Mortgage and Housing, and there are requirements there in terms of the affordability. To be named as an affordable unit, actually only about a quarter of the units have to be in the affordable range, 80% or less of the market rate. So we're proposing rents of about 800 to 1,000, depending whether it's 1 or 2 bedroom. But we want to apply that to the whole building, not just to the smaller percentage that that is required for funding. We want to make sure the whole building is affordable in that way. And then some clients will as well be available for some rent subsidy programs that may be available through the county or other organizations like Canada Mental Health.
So when would you think that you would have a shovel in the ground?
Well, we're still working on the funding part of it. If we have approval for the bylaws, we can now then move forward with the funding applications and purchase the properties. So I would anticipate it's probably going to be a year anyways before we would have shovel in the ground.
So at that time, would you have a plan in place of where you're going to move the people that are currently residing in the emergency shelter?
Good question. Yes, we have, and that's where I see, as said earlier, the light at the end of the tunnel is the Heart Hub project that's just been funded by the county. It's, by the province. It has provisions for supportive housing beds and addictions beds that will accommodate a number of those folks at the shelter that have those needs.
But there is
some of the other affordable housing projects that are coming online that the county's developed. We anticipate that will accommodate some of the individuals as well.
So just to be clear, we know that the Heart Hub that's being proposed is not, I think I said that wrong, the Heart funding is not going to be at this location.
That's correct. We'll see the move of the resource center to another location that the county's proposing.
And my final question would be, I think I read in this proposal that the rent that you're assigning to would be for 25 years. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
yeah, we would be required to have affordable housing available for 25 years before anything would be changed.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, Councillor McRoberts?
Thank you through the chair. Hi, Miles. I'm not sure who's going to be the management group of this property for those that are neighbors on Exmouth that may be concerned about who's coming in and who's going to be there. Is there ever going to be anyone on site that's just kind of holding it all together daily?
Yeah, the property will be owned and managed by the inn. We would be looking at likely, because that's not our experience in terms of managing apartments and that, we would contract to an existing property management company to look after the day-to-day operations, maintenance, and that sort of thing. But it would be an inn property managed and directed by the inn.
Okay.
Thank you. No further questions to Mr. McGuffin, and the applicant does have the right to come back at the end just to clarify anything that comes up in any future ensuing discussion. So I have Mr. Giozzi, representing the neighborhood, is going to come forward and speak.
We'll get them set up now.
Thank you. And keep everyone within the 10-minute rule, if that's possible. Welcome, sir. If you'd like to go ahead.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to appear in front of you today. My appearance today is twofold. One, to appear as a commercial property owner owning two properties on either side of the proposed development. A second, to appear on behalf of the Melrose Community Group, a group formed to restore the community to the state it was prior to the arrival of the temporary emergency housing shelter in 2023. The group was formed after complaints about the current use of the church property and its negative overflow into the community went unanswered by Lambton County, the Inn of the Good Shepherd, and the Emmanuel Presbyterian Church. As a property owner, I would like to express my opposition to the redevelopment plans. On February 26, a detailed letter was delivered to the Planning Department explaining the reasons why. A summary of the objections are as follows. 1, the redesignation of the currently zoned residential property to commercial, thereby encroaching on commercial activity deeper into a mature, well-established residential community. I understand staff have now responded to the item and have acknowledged the requested zoning change does not constitute good planning. Instead, they are supportive of a compound zoning designation which would permit uses of any of the zones forming the compound designation on any part of the lands with site-specific requirements. I view either zoning method as yielding the same results, commercial use, both still encroaching into a well-established mature residential neighborhood. Despite staff recommendations, I still support the view that what is now designated commercial should remain commercial, and what is designated residential truly remain residential, free of exceptions to allow the project to fit. 2, the reduced parking requirement from 0.75 to 0.6 per unit will leave a deficiency in the required spots with no consideration to visitor parking or parking to accommodate the planned commercial space. I do not support the view that the deficiency will produce no significant overflow into the community. 3, 0-meter landscape strip versus the required 3-meter provides for no buffering or protection for the community. We do not support the view that a privacy fence in itself replaces the additional buffering that a landscape strip would provide. 4, the overall height, floor area, minimum lot area, front yard setback, each sacrificed to support a larger structure, which we argue is an overdevelopment. The project is too dense in terms of height and capacity and does not transition smoothly into the neighborhood or the community as a whole. 5, a new entrance exit on Melrose Ave has only been lightly mentioned in the reporting and indicated to be the main access to the redevelopment where no access exists now. The proposed Exmouth entrance exit is considered to be secondary. Where the consultants expressed the opinion that there will be no disruption to the community, we would disagree. Melrose Ave is considered a local street intended to service low-density residential area, whereas the Exmouth Street is an arterial street carrying volumes of traffic for both commercial and residential purposes. Through personal past experience, I can confirm commercial access from local streets was greatly discouraged or not allowed because of known disruptions they create to communities. I am of the opinion there should only be one access to the property, and that should be off of Exmouth Street. And while on the specific point, I will point out area residents have expressed concern about glaring headlights entering their homes and that a privacy fence or wall should instead be constructed on the proposed Melrose entrance exit section, should the proposal move forward. Speaking on behalf of the Melrose community, I can confirm they share the same concerns that I have brought forward. In addition, I wanted to clarify 2 items that appeared in the consultant's report. 1, The current use of the church property is listed as a housing hub, whereas its actual use is a housing and homeless hub by day and a temporary emergency housing shelter by night. Secondly, the document commented that there were no objections received from the public during last summer's meeting. The group wishes to communicate the question was not specifically asked and the participants were only open to considering the proposal as an option to move the negative unwanted activity from the community.
Excuse me, Your Worship. I keep getting static, and it's really troubling the presentation.
Yes, Councillor Kilner, I was about to address that with our IT person. It appears to be coming from the microphone that Tony is using.
One moment.
We can still hear you, but it's annoying to listen to with the voice with it. It appears to have gone away, if that helps. Tony, would you like to continue, please?
Yep, okay. To pick up on my last point here, I had made reference to a public meeting that was held last summer, and the comment was made that there were no objections to the proposed development. And I wanted to make it clear that the question wasn't specifically asked, and the group was open to hearing about the proposal as an option to deal with the unwanted activity in the community. So to continue, in support of the community position, I shared a petition with each of you signed by 258 residents, property owners, business owners, and their staff speaking against the exemptions being requested and the redevelopment project as a whole. Since forwarding the petition, we have been contacted by 7 more individuals asking that their names be added. It is their collective opinion that this is an inappropriate place for such a development. The community is engaged on this topic, and their position, despite being reassured the complex will not operate as a shelter or the community does not understand the intended use of the redeveloped property. On this point, the community has had in-depth discussions and has concluded, even though the development is being relabeled or labeled as an affordable housing development, it will actually operate as a supportive housing facility, catering to those at risk of being homeless, those struggling with chronic physical or mental issues, or those facing substance abuse disorders. To further support this view, comments have been made in the staff report that the commercial space within the complex is to be used for in-person supportive services. To this end, we ask you, how does the community find itself in a better position with a new development that will only permanently place the currently negative overflow issues we have been fighting so hard to rid our community of? We are of the opinion that our problems will only be compounded by the increased number of individuals as residents will be brought in from throughout Lambton County to live here. We feel as if we are being misled by the applicant as to the actual intended use. We would also like to bring forward a situation that occurred in London, Ontario, where an apartment building was built under the affordable umbrella and opened in 2022. Fast forward to 2024, the complex is riddled with issues related to drug abuse, violence, homicides, insects, graffiti, and skyrocketing maintenance costs. Comments have been made by officials that highly supportive requirements needed are not physically or financially sustainable. A recently released audit confirms the project was not designed for the tenant structure. This is exactly the permanent risk that this proposal leaves our community with, which is essentially where we find ourselves now with the shelter. Having now had the opportunity to voice our objections, we want to acknowledge there is a need for true affordable housing, and we would have appreciated learning what other sites were being considered before ours was chosen. We are of the opinion that affordable housing should be housing for those truly strained individuals who are eager to move forward, and those that are suffering from mental issues, a health crisis, or addictions must have their issues resolved before being considered for such housing. Our position greatly differs from that of Lambton County and the Inn of the Good Shepherd, as they believe housing will solve all issues regardless of impact of cost to the community. Whereas wherever you may personally fall with this issue, we wish to leave you with an alternative site to consider. Lambton County currently owns a property located at 160 Exmouth Street, and it houses the Lambton County Health Unit. We are of the opinion that the property holds a zoning designation that it could accommodate the proposed structure. Access lands on the property are available that could be gifted to the applicant in place of providing seed money, and professional supportive services for residents is key and can be integrated into the adjacent health unit space. And ample public transportation is available. Savings realized with land acquisition costs could easily be reallocated to the development of additional affordable housing units. Lambton County and the Inn of the Good Shepherd needs to contribute towards resolutions without penalizing communities for the problems they did not create. In conclusion, we have presented our reasons why we don't support the request and the belief the proposal does not reflect good planning. Rather than just saying our piece and moving forward, we have taken the extra step to say there are more appropriate options out there and more transparent work needs to be done, hopefully with direct community involvement. We would ask for council's support of our position to deny the redevelopment request and the recommendations we have left the applicant with to move forward. We thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions before I move to the next speaker? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. Thank you for it. Andrew, is there anyone else waiting to speak? Before I go back to Mr. McGuffin and his group.
I don't believe we have any more speakers.
Okay, thank you. Back to Mr. McGovern and the applicant. Number of questions raised there. Can you address those questions? The concern is this is just a backdoor way to create another sort of shelter environment to hurt that neighborhood.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that's a question best answered by our client, Mr. Vanny. Just wanted to speak just prior to turning it over to him in regard to, I guess, question in regard to access and the whole notion of affordable housing and being in an inappropriate location. I take it then if the affordability was off the table, there wouldn't be an issue based on that comment, and that it's just the fact that it's providing units that are affordable. I will counter that in that many municipalities are incorporating affordable housing units in every development, providing opportunities in and incentivizing opportunities in all types of apartment and ground-oriented housing to provide for affordable housing pieces. I'll let Mr. Vanny proceed and sort of discuss in detail who his tenants are. With respect to transition, we had requested specifically setbacks in which commercial use would be permitted within the designation, and then where residential use would be permitted only for the purposes of not allowing for encroachment of commercial uses across the totality of the land ownership. So providing very specific and technical parameters within the proposed zoning to do that, and that this is a very eloquent and transitional land use in the location, and the proposal to put single-story towns at the back of the property so as to transition the height and the form of that land use into the existing community beyond the property. So in response to those pieces, I will turn it over now to Mr. Vanny to be able to respond to the other pieces on affordability.
Okay, I have a question for Councillor Dennis, and I'll go to Mr. Vanny and your response.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. To the gentleman, I didn't catch his name. The gentleman that's in his car.
Mr. McGuffin.
Pardon me, sir.
Jay McGuffin with Monteith Brown Planning.
Oh, Jay, how are you? Councillor Bill Dennis. Sir, I was a realtor, real estate broker for 26, 27 years. I just a question, maybe just sir, would you purchase a house beside this facility like this, or would you like if you a home that you live in? Would you be excited if one of these properties were to pop up beside where you live right now? Or if you have children, would you recommend that your children buy a house beside one of these facilities?
I guess it depends contextually on what the building looks like.
Really?
Neighborhood looks
like. Really?
Absolutely.
You would? Well,
absolutely.
26 years in real estate, sir. I would. You're. I would bet you a steak dinner that you wouldn't. And I know I can tell you that probably 99.9% of the clients that I've dealt with would, because I can promise you that probably in about 10 years, probably less than that, it's going to look like the back end of a hard winter's night. And the chances are when it's going to be very, very difficult to sell, and your home is probably going to be worth 10 to 15 to 20% less than comparable homes around the city. And that's if you go to sell, because living beside one of those places is going to be a nightmare. I can tell you that. I can promise you that.
Well, your worship, I can respond to that, and I do own an office building in the city of London, and it is 2 blocks from a very similar. It's actually from a very high risk facility. So to that point, and then I would also add further that in the city of London, many of the brand new high-rise buildings have a 10 to 15% affordable housing component within them to interject into the normal housing opportunities for affordable housing. So integration is that piece. And really what we're looking at is an improvement of a poor situation that's currently existing. And it sounds to me like perhaps that this would be an appropriate use if it wasn't in the city.
Well, I know for a fact that Ferrari walked away from the table. They were considering building a number of buildings in downtown London, and they walked away because of that very, very proposal you were talking about. They were asked to incorporate a number of units in their buildings, and they walked away from the table in London a couple of years ago, if maybe even sooner than that. Because of that, because of the council dictating that to them. So I would have to, we'll have to agree to disagree on that when it comes to that. I don't blame the neighbors one bit. That's their biggest investment.
This is a period of questions to the applicants. Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you through the chair. I have 2 questions if I could. First would be to Miles, and if you can just again confirm, and you've been in contact with social services, exactly the people that are going to be potentially moving into this from the by name list. And second of all, just in reference to Councillor Dennis, people that live in $2 million homes aren't going to want a $1 million home next to them, and the $1 million don't want a $300,000 house next to them, and so on and so on. And yes, we do have addicted people, we have mental health, but we have that with people that have a lot of money and people that have no money. So nobody wants anybody else except an equivalent to them to be their neighbor. And if we can just, like Mr. Vanny said earlier, put a little bit of this kind of, well, I believe that was the builder. There's got to be some of this a little bit everywhere so that it's not impacting in one space all of the neighbors. It has to be a little bit of something everywhere so that these folks have a chance to say, wow, this is what I can live and what I can't live like. There has to be a choice, right?
let's say this for the debate. Are there any further comments, Mr. Vanny, you wanted to make on this issue before I close the meeting and go to look for a direction from council?
Certainly. Thank you for the last opportunity to speak. And again, just to reiterate, our skill set in terms of supports and housing doesn't match what the current clients in the shelter need in terms of, you know, severe or not severe, but in-depth housing supports, mental health and addiction supports. That's the skill set that Indwell is bringing to the table and working with the county to provide that. We're looking at just everyday working people that need affordable housing. If we look at any townhouse or apartment complex in our community, you will find there are people that are low income, that are working part-time jobs, multiple part-time jobs, who will use our services when things get rough at different times of the year. That's who we're trying to address, and that's who we're trying to provide those supports to. And those that need the in-depth mental health and addictions will be supported through the Indwell programs.
Thank you. Any further questions or any other comments? Councillor Dennis, before I move to close the meeting and go to a resolution from council.
Yeah, yes. Mayor Bradley, through you to Mr. Vanny. Miles, with all due respect, Miles, the neighbors simply don't believe a lot of well, it's not you particularly. I know you're a gentleman, but the neighbors have had one heck of a time with that place next door, and I know that they've had discussions with you and with county members, and I don't know if it's city members. They've been lied to. They've been told different things. They've been told that they're going to mitigate the damage, and it gets worse. It gets worse, and they don't believe anything that people say. I don't blame them. It's been living hell for these people. And when people say that they're going to do things, or it's going to be utopia and all this kind of stuff, they don't believe it. I don't blame them one bit. Like, it's easy for people to say this and make them feel bad and say that they're heartless because they don't want to take care of people that have been down on their luck. But their lives should not be affected. It's that simple.
Councillor, we're dealing with the delegation. I will move the motion.
I'm just making a point to him.
I'm going to move forward. I see no other comments being made or indication to speak from the delegation. I'm going to close the official public meeting portion, and I will look for a resolution from council. Councillor White?
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, is there a seconder?
I second.
Councillor Boushy. Discussion. Councillor Burrell, Councillor Dennis, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do think very much is an overdevelopment of the site. I think it's also very insensitive of the people who are promoting this to do this so quickly after the endurance the neighbors have had to go through the last couple of years with a situation, an unfortunate situation that was in this neighborhood. If they had waited till things calmed down and come back in 2 years or something, it may have been different. But I do think that this is not a good time. It's not going to be good for the neighborhood. I think that if they were going to build some nonprofit housing, and we have approved a number of them over the last couple of years, and they just don't seem to develop. So I don't know why this one would be expected to develop. So I think we're antagonizing the neighborhood unnecessarily, and I don't think it's it's good for our community to do this kind of thing at this time. And then of course I have my continuing bugaboo that the parking just is not adequate, and to assume that the parking requirements of this type of development are going to be so much less than what our bylaw calls for. And when they've asked for so much other relief in terms of other boundaries and spaces and buffers and within this development, It's just an overdevelopment of the site, pure and simple. And so I will not be supporting it.
Thank you. We've got Councillor McRoberts.
I'm next.
Okay. If you want to go next, you go next.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I have Councillor McRoberts, and then I have Councillor Gillis and
You
Councillor
know,
Kilner.
the last few rezoning applications we've had, some of the people that have been against it have complained about removing trees. They've complained about the possibility of snakes being removed, squirrels, birds, you name it. And I'm not going to say it's silly. It's maybe to me it's silly, but to them it's important. But in this case, these people are concerned about safety. They're concerned about the enjoyment of their neighborhoods. They're concerned about their businesses. They're concerned about their property values. And so on. And they have very, very legitimate beefs. And you know, and they have a long petition. And I'm sure that they probably could have got a lot more names too as well. What we're doing to neighborhoods is just not right. And it goes back to Rainbow Park. It goes to other neighborhoods too as well. We have to stop this. And I understand there's people that are hurting. I get it. Everybody's hurting, some more than others, and that's wrong. But the thing is we can't, the people that are really hurting, we can't drag down the other people that maybe aren't quite as hurting to help the ones that are really, really hurting. And you know, like, you know, to get like a lecture earlier by someone that doesn't own a house themselves to try to explain to me about market values and to sacrifice a little bit more, like maybe people we should all own houses, and maybe we can understand that the work and the pride and the sacrifice that it takes for people to actually own homes. And then you'll understand. And when you're raising kids and your kids have to see this kind of stuff, because I'm telling you right now, things never work out the way that they're planned. This place is not going to be the utopia that people think it's going to be, and it doesn't work out the way it's supposed to work out. It won't. It will look like a dog's breakfast over time, and that the people aren't going to be Ozzie and Harriet that walk out of the place. People are going to experience some you know, it's not going to be just the way people envision it. The fact of the matter is we can't destroy neighborhoods. We can't scuttle neighborhoods to make way for good intentions. And I know people have the best of intentions. They have good hearts. They're doing this with good hearts. But the fact of the matter is we're doing other damage in other areas to citizens that didn't cause the current problems that we're in. But anyways, I'm certainly not supporting this application. I've never in my career in real estate, I've always, pardon me, in politics, I've always supported affordable housing projects. This is not the location for it. It's that simple. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to record the vote. I've got Councillor Gillis and I've got Councillor Kilner.
I think you had Councillor McRoberts before me, Your Worship.
Well, the other councillor interrupted the batting order, so you're next, and then I go to Councillor Kilner, and I'll go to Councillor McRoberts.
Okay, fair enough. I have to agree in one respect with a lot of what has been said by both speakers previous to me. I do believe that it is an overdevelopment. I do believe that is going to have a negative impact on the neighborhood. I do believe that proposing and trying to get this done within a year is looked upon by the neighborhood of antagonizing them even more than they already have been. When you bring a project like this into an existing neighborhood that's already been harmed, and yes, I would say harmed is a fair question, fair statement, harmed by what has been introduced to their neighborhood by an outside source. We've seen that happen when Central Baptist Church, I think that's correct, was temporarily made a shelter, and the Heritage District suffered as a result. We've seen it happening at Laurel Church, and the neighborhood has been suffering as a result. And what I think we need to do is we need to have a coming of the minds of the neighborhood and those who are developing this affordable housing. Because affordable housing, you're absolutely right, is needed. The actual intent looks very good. But because there is such mistrust in the neighborhood, it's going to have a very difficult time being accepted at this time. Now, coming back to talking about bringing things in that are foreign, there is a little community that lives down by Oak Acres Plaza, and it's called Jubilee Gardens, and it's been there since the 70s, and it is a county run affordable housing geared to income, and it exists and nobody even knows it's there. There's beautiful houses that surround it. It was integrated and it was handled and still is handled and dealt with perfectly. Melts into the neighborhood. It's a great addition. That is what I see this can be, but it has to be handled properly and it has to be introduced properly. And at this point in time, I think we're missing the point. It's not happening. When we look at, for example, management of the site is key. And to not have that nailed down and not be able to explain to us fully what that's going to look like, except that it's going to be a management company, that causes me a great deal of concern. And those people that signed that petition, I'm sure that they are having that great concern as well. When I look at Maxwell Park Place, which was on the old Marsh and Gowan site, when we as a county introduced that to people and what it was going to be for, and it was for affordable housing geared to income, primarily for senior women, the place went crazy. The neighborhood went absolutely crazy. We had 2 meetings and we had to have police there to manage the crowd. That's how big it was. And yet what happened was we held the meetings, we created neighborhood committees, we explained what we were trying to do. We had full consultation with everyone, right up to the shovel in the ground and beyond. That, to my way of thinking, was the way to do affordable housing successfully. And I think that's what's needed here as well. So coming back to my previous points, you had a really good affordable housing complex in place, and it's still there today. Jubilee Gardens, it's been there for over 50 years. You've got to have very good management of the site once it's built. You have to have public meetings to get buy-in from the neighborhood. And honestly, you really have to do something more about the parking. So I'm not saying that it isn't something that needs and could be made and done. I just think it's premature and there's a lot more work that needs to be done before it will be accepted into what we all hope it will be.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Kilner, Councillor McRoberts, and I'll call the question, record the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, like I do concur with a lot of what Councillor Gillis has just said, but I keep returning to that fundamental question because it feels like we are in the midst of crisis and around access to housing, and if we don't start moving forward some of these projects, I mean, perhaps we need to start asking neighborhoods, are you a health, like, what is the health of your neighborhood that can produce the fruit of resilience from people who need spaces like this? How do we consult in that way? Because pretty much to this point, it feels like we've gotten 100% no. Yet we keep denying these projects. It means, expect Rainbow Park 2.0. So we've got to figure out something going forward. And I'm just incredibly, I mean, I grew up in the city and there was always a different resolve about the people. The people here thought we could always we could always figure things out. And like to add to that, I mean, the absolute lack of provincial guidance and law around what we can do to help people move into a space of how we figure this thing out and what legal mechanisms and funding mechanisms we can use. I just know I feel incredibly disappointed, and I really don't know what this summer is going to bring if we continue to deny applications. And I say that acknowledging everything, like I'm really wrestling, because I'm hearing Councillor Gillis, I'm hearing the neighborhood, but at the same time I'm still feeling like we're in a catch-22.
Thank you. I've got Councillor McRoberts. Then I'm going to call the question and record the vote.
Thank you through the chair. From all the conversation and debate, is this the perfect place? No. Do I think there is a perfect place? No. But I would like to, there's no animosity, but Councillor Dennis, you have a lot of experience in real estate. So my question to you would be, where would be the location? Where in the area?
Probably on a major artery. The Greek church put an application on one last term. It was on Murphy Road. Unfortunately, it didn't turn into anything. Where the Indigenous Center is on Confederation, that was nice. That in-well project that we Ryan's house on London Road, and then that project we just approved not too long ago, again adjacent to Ryan's house on London Road. The major arteries tend to be a good place. This place on Exmouth, it's indebted. It's not on the main road. Those places tend to be a little bit better. This when it's sunk into the area, it's not. But the church itself, it's actually on Melrose. It's not on Exmouth. But I find myself, like even Martian Golden Manor, it's on London Road. Those places on major arteries tend to be a little bit better. I find, and quite honestly, Tony's suggestion about the Lambton County Lambton Health Center, that there's plenty of space right there. Some people even talked at one time when we had difficulty with the encampment, that would be a good place for the encampment actually at one time, but that was a long time ago. But that's usually the better places for them on major arteries. They're on a transportation hub, obviously, with a transit, and the gentleman was right. Like it's these places tend to be closer to amenities and other things and that sort of thing. But it's just sunk. It's too close into the residential neighbors area.
The motion has been moved and seconded, and I will record the vote. Those in favor of the application. Those in favor of the application. Councillor White, Councillor Kellner, Councillor Boushy, and myself. Those opposed. Councillor Dennis, Burrell, McRoberts, Gillis, and Vandenberg. So the application does not move forward. Thank you. We have two other delegations, so we can move to them. One is from the Laws Organization, if they'd like to come forward and make their presentation. They have up to 10 minutes. And then we have one final presentation from the Downtown Collective.
They're just joining now.
Thank you. We have Mayor Hand and Mayor Atkinson from Plimpton, Wyoming. And Mr. Harper, you're making the presentation. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Bradley, members of council and staff. My name is Gary Atkinson. I'm the mayor of the town of Plimpton, Wyoming. I'm also the vice chair of the Laws. Joining me today is Clinton Harper, our general manager, as well as our chair, Bev Hand, the mayor of Point Edward. As many of you are aware, our Laws system consists of the municipalities of St. Clair Township, City of Sarnia, the Village of Point Edward, the Town of Plimpton, Wyoming, and the Township of Warwick, and the Municipality of Lambton Shores. I'd also like to recognize your representative to laws, Councillor Terry Burrell, as well. Mayor Bradley, we're here today to speak about forming a new way for laws to be able to move forward and research new opportunities to apply for grants to complete many upcoming projects. The current way that we are structured does not allow us that opportunity or the capability to do that. For example, since 2016, the town of Petrolia has been able to apply and receive over $21.2 million related to their water treatment, storage, and distribution infrastructure. The way that laws is currently set up, we do not have the opportunity to do that. We're looking to reform it so we have an opportunity to go out to the government as a group to apply for loans and apply for grants to do the needed infrastructure that is certainly needed within our system. Mayor, at this time, if you're comfortable, I'd like to turn it over to our General Manager, Mr. Clinton Harper, for his presentation.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Atkinson. Thank you, Mayor Bradley. Hello, my name is Clint Harper. I'm the General Manager for the Lambton Water Supply System. So this is an information presentation. It's intended for the City of Sarnia Municipal Council as one of LAW's 6 municipal members. Let me just jump to the second slide. So thank you for hearing our delegation today. So I have about 5 minutes of notes around the following slides. And just to be clear, so today we're here to introduce LAW's goal to transition the organization into a Municipal Service Corporation, or an MSC, and hopefully collect a motion of support from the city for the development of the foundational legal documentation needed for our members to make an informed decision on this topic. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Slide 3, please. So why does the board wish to reorganize laws in this way? So it's there's a simple answer, and there's a simple answer to this important question. So laws is not currently established under the Municipal Act, and therefore, from the perspective of the province, in many ways, laws doesn't exist. It's important that laws is permitted to exist for a few different reasons, but consider that the system laws maintains are essentially the backbone of your local water distribution network. Arguably, laws, facilities, and pipelines are more important to the supply of potable water locally. Yet, as a legal entity, laws is indistinguishable from your municipality. I think we can all agree that laws facilities are at least as important as the assets that make up your local distribution network. Fortunately, due to laws' organizational structure being outside the Municipal Act, laws projects are considered secondary, if not invalid, by the province. Please go to slide 4. So why is provincial recognition important to laws? Over the next 20 years, laws is looking for $145 million in capital work needed to maintain our current level of service and to achieve our growth-related targets. Programs developed by the province to assist with capital work are not directly available to laws due to our organizational structure. This has become a major barrier to laws and ultimately our members as we move into the future. Next slide, please. For the what? So of the organizational vehicles available under the Municipal Act, the Municipal Service Corporation would provide laws with the greatest level of authority possible to act in the best interests of the overall system. Future Municipal Service Corporation would be designed to operate similar to how laws exist today, in a strict framework and under the guidelines established by its municipal stakeholders at time of incorporation. Slide 6, please. So Mayor Atkinson spoke of the success that the town of Petrolia has had at securing provincial funding for its water infrastructure in recent years. So the town of Petrolia owes their success to the fact that they directly own their water assets and have a unified voice of a provincially recognized municipal organization, their municipal council, making the overall and final decision on behalf of their water system. You, as the municipal council for City of Sarnia, also have the ability to wield this same awesome municipal power in decisions that you make. Your municipality also has direct ownership over your municipal assets. By comparison, right now, laws has neither this voice nor direct ownership over any of the assets we maintain. Board of Directors established to govern a municipal service corporation of a newly formed laws water utility, if done properly, will have a unified voice component of the equation and allow laws to engage directly with the province of Ontario with matters of laws. So the second part of the equation is related to asset ownership. Slide 7, please. Asset ownership is an extremely important factor when being considered for provincial programs. In 2023, laws stated $93 million in tangible capital assets. These are legally your municipality's joint assets under the current organizational structure. And it's because of this ownership that your municipal council is put in a position where you must call the shots in terms of provincial programs and weigh laws projects against the needs of your municipality. In order for a reorganization of laws to be successful, it would require the transfer of ownership of the assets that make up laws as it exists today from the benefiting municipalities to the newly formed corporation. Right, 8. So the when. So the decision to reorganize is ultimately a decision of municipal council. At this time, the Law's Joint Board of Management is working towards completing the public engagement needed to build the new corporation's foundational documents. At a future date, once the work is complete, the transition may only be made with the consensus of the 6 municipal councils that make up laws as it exists today. Slide 9, please. One more. So your input is needed. In addition to the information session, 1 media release, and 1 public workshop, along with any additional requirements placed upon laws by our members, is all being planned to be completed within the next few months. Feedback we receive will be used to develop the new corporation's foundational documents. Draft versions of these documents will be provided to all members for their review once public consultation is complete. Slide 10, please. At this point, we request that you consider the following motion of support for this process. Your support and input are needed if the effort is going to be successful. And I'd just like to thank you again for hearing us today. And in closing, I believe Mayor Hand would like to say a few things. Thank you.
Please go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Harper. Please go ahead, Mayor Hand.
Sorry, I'm out of town, so I apologize. Thank you again for your time today. This is the last of our presentations. We've already visited 5 communities and received approval and support from those 5 communities. I also wanted to let you know that in the last couple of months, we met with Minister Calendra, who was very supportive of this approach and said this is the approach that he is trying to get Mississauga and Peel to go forward with. And he wanted to be available to ask us questions from the research that we've done. So he was very positive on this direction. And the important other considerations I wanted to mention is that we lose no control over the restructuring. As a board, we would still have the same control that we have today. And we would also have the same voting process as we have today. The only thing that's different is then we have the access, as we talked about, to being able to apply for grants for a lot of the future infrastructure work that needs to be done, at the same time not impacting our individual members' ability to apply for such grants. So thank you again for your time today.
Thank you to mayors and to Mr. Harper. I have a question which I will support the motion to go forward to do the diligence. Will representation on the board be based on usage?
Chair, so through the chair, thank you for the question, Mayor Bradley. Yes, it would be, I apologize. Basically, we've been directed to build it to match what is existing right now from that perspective, definitely.
Okay, so for those who aren't aware, when back in 1999, I believe it was, the city at that time was using 74% of the water, ended up with less than 50% of the voting power on this particular group. And it's been a source of concern ever since. But I'm willing to move this forward, but that discussion needs to take place. Councillor Burrell?
Your Worship, as you know, I am the laws representative for the city of Sarnia, and I absolutely do not support this direction. And in fact, I would make that as a motion that we do not do this. And if I can get a seconder, then I would like to explain why I don't think it's in our best interest to do this.
Councillor Dance is seconding your motion.
Yes, so I apologize to the good folks who have come and made this presentation, but if you look on page, for the delegation here, it's our page 65 of 197, table 1, it shows that the city of Sarnia uses 60% of the water of this, and as was mentioned, we have in effect, there are 11 votes and we have 5. So we have less than 50%, even though we use more than 50% of the water. And as you can, if you read through this, you can sort of tell we are really, in terms of the city, we're basically mature in the sense that we seldom put in a new water line. We often replace a water line. So our system is, in some places, I'm sure some of the pipes are 100 years old. So we are pretty stable. The water plant is within this boundary of the city of Sarnia. And there's a lot of potential, I guess, development that's going out there. And as was mentioned by the general manager, there's about $145 million worth of projects that laws would like to accomplish over the planning horizon. But what this all means is they, in effect, want to incorporate this company in order, primarily, to issue debt. And that debt, we will be responsible for 60% of it. And I would have a hard time making an argument that that is good value for Sarnia's money. What happens is when they put together these, let me just back up. The current makeup of the board is I represent the city of Sarnia, and the other municipalities are represented by their mayors, and we all bring our own input for each meeting. And additionally, normally at the meeting is some, if not all, of the engineers that are the main waterworks people in each of our communities. So we have good technical people, and on top of that, we have the people who work for laws, and we have the representatives from Aqua, who are the main subcontractors, in effect, who really run the system. So we have really good technical people on hand, and we have people who are experienced representative for the municipalities. When they go to this corporation, there will be a new board of directors, and the first thing they tell you when you're in any of these board of directors, just like if you become a member of the police service board or any other, they tell you, oh, well, you have a fiduciary responsibility to operate in the best interest of the organization for which you are a member on the board. So what that means is that if you go there, you no longer represent Sarnia. You go there and you represent laws to Sarnia. And to me, that's the tail wagging the dog. So if they are going to go forward with these $145 million worth of improvements they would like to make, it's going to incur debt, and the city of Sarnia will be proportionately responsible for that debt. I think I like the system the way it's now. It really, even though the form has changed a little bit, it's really the same form that it's been in since I believe the plant was built in the 1970s. And to me, it runs pretty good. And certainly the organization is not starved for funds. Actually, in terms of the projects last year, there's about $26 million worth of capital works that were worked on and completed last year. And I think the annual budget, there were some big ones in there, but the annual budget is at least $5 $6, $7, $8 million worth of capital works. So to me, everything's been working on it, but what's going to happen is we're going to end up with a tail wagging the dog. We're going to have this organization set up, this new corporation, and it's going to tell us what to do. And it's going to take it out of the hands and out of the elected representatives, and it's going to be put in the hands of a board of directors that may or may not do what the municipalities want. Now they'll say, oh, well, you're going to have this set up, this and things, but all this happens once it becomes its own corporation. It really is out of our hands, and I think that things are working fine now, and this new thing is just going to create more problems. And we use 60% of the water. I would not want to give away that much power to an outside organization that's out of the hands of the city. So I would not support setting up this corporation.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kellner, now, if I understand correctly, if this motion's moved forward, it'll simply do the diligence and come back to us. Is that the case to the presenters?
The chair, that's correct. However, the reason why we're here again is we need the municipality to actually make this to basically implement this. This isn't something that can be implemented by the Joint Board of Management. It has to be implemented by the 6 members. There's a cost to building this piece. The board has set aside funding to be able to accomplish this. So if there's a motion approved for of support to proceed, it would trigger that funding to be able to build this foundational piece. The stakeholders agreement would then come back to this group, to all groups, for their review and comment, and ability to at that point either decide to implement or to decide to not implement. I know there's less said there by Councillor Burrell, and I appreciate that input. There is one kind of key thing that needs to be indicated, though. It is that the goal of this process is to basically elevate laws to the same stage, I guess, as you could say, as our municipal members. Like, we function right now in a situation where we are like secondary, basically, right? So if I request a delegation of AMO, I need to be able to request that through our members. They don't actually see us as a municipal organization. And as an organization as critical as laws, I think there's an issue with that, right? So, but again, there's a lot of truth to what Councillor Burrell said. It would provide a level of insulation between laws and the city on a lot of different matters. As for loss of control, again, the stakeholders agreement would define what the board could be, and it would be whatever you want it to be. It could actually have more control than it has right now. It could have less. It's whatever this group wishes it to have. When it comes down to it, 100%, we need the ability to be able to tackle some of these projects separately from the city. And unfortunately, that would impact debt carrying. It could 100%. We expect that it will. But on the flip side of that, right now we don't even get to talk to the province about this issue, where we could get funding directly from them, but we don't have that ability. So, right now we're looking at 100% funding, where we could be looking at partial funding from the province on certain things. If we're talking about grant opportunities, there's also low interest loans and other aspects that we don't have access to that we would if we were established under the Municipal Act as a municipal service corporation. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, I mean, you can understand from the city point of view, we created and built the plant along with Point Edward, and we've lost control over it. And we fought a couple of efforts off to make us take on debt that had nothing to do with the city. So I'm still willing to do the diligence, but I want it understood that we still have the right to say no. I got Councillor Kellner and Councillor Vandenberg.
So through you, the mayor, to Councillor Burrell, I wonder, because I hear you loud and clear, Councillor, I wonder if adjusting this to really kind of reorder that the voting privilege at that meeting to be commensurate with the money spent there from the municipalities, our impact on that. I wonder if that would change the dynamic, or are you suggesting something else?
And if you're asking me, I'm suggesting probably what we have now is probably the best we're going to get in terms of 5 votes out of 11, because the province is very unlikely at any point, even though we are the majority usage, they are unlikely to give us majority control. Just like when we joined Lambton County, we had majority of the people and various other things. They gave us 40% of the vote there as well. So that they just don't want one municipality dominating the other ones. And I can sort of see that from the point of view of the other municipalities. I'm not sure how it works with regards to the Grand Bend line that runs to London. I would assume London has control of that one because they're so much bigger than the rest, but it is, I understand where you're coming from. It would make sense if we had representation according to population or by usage or whatever. That would make some sense, but I don't see that happening. And maybe somebody else has more information than I do, but I don't see that happening.
May I follow up?
Sure, go ahead, and then Councillor Vandenberg.
Yeah, so right now, it feels like we are in a position to allow discussions to move forward. Is that correct, Mayor Bradley?
My understanding is that we approve this motion, we still have the opportunity down the road to say no. Is that correct to the presenters?
Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I wonder if we could.
I would disagree with that. Sorry.
So I wonder, my big wondering today is really if that is the case, if it's a good faith discussion that we moved this thing forward with that particular stipulation, that Sarnia's voting privileges would be commensurate alongside the proportion of what they pay into this. If that was a possibility and we could hear back if we move this forward, that's what I would suggest. I know Councillor Burrell sounds suspicious or perhaps not positive about how that outcome would work, but I wonder if we could feed that back in and hear back at the next meeting about what that would look like. I would certainly support that if it was a possibility. But again, to your point, Councillor Burrell, you have a lot more experience on that than I do, so perhaps you could give me feedback on why.
Okay, just a reminder to everyone, the motion on the floor is not to proceed. And if it was to fail, then I would look for an alternative motion. And if it's to pass, then it answers the question. Councillor Vandenberg, you've been patiently waiting, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Burrell, if you want to add anything else in.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, this is just thrown at us today. Basically, they've just unloaded this on us. If it's this important to us, and I think it is, should we not just kick it down so we can get some more input, some more understanding of what's going on here? Councillor Burrell certainly raised some good issues. The other side's raised some good issues, but I just don't feel comfortable that we have enough information here today to proceed on this.
Well, if you wish to move a motion to table it, that's not debatable. That would be in order. If that's what you wish to do and get a staff report back on the implications.
I would like that so that I've got some good, solid information.
Not debatable. I got your motion. I've got Councillor Kilner seconding. All those in favor? Yeah, there's a majority in favor, and those opposed. Yeah, there was a majority in favor, so we will get a staff report and we'll come back to the delegation. And thank you for presenting today. It's appreciated. One last delegation, that is Downtown Collective Group, a newly formed group that wanted council asked them to come to council. Just explain a little bit about who they are. You have up to 10 minutes to do so. Please go ahead. Introduce yourself and please go ahead.
They're joining now.
If the collective would like to go ahead, you've got 10 minutes to present. And if you can introduce who's speaking, that would be appreciated. Sorry, we cannot hear you.
I'm not seeing any movement on the mic. You may need to check if it's using the right mic.
Hear us now?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. Sorry. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having us and allowing us to share with you information about our group, the Downtown Collective. Next slide, please. So we've prepared a short presentation, and in it, we'll outline the newly formed structure of the Downtown Collective, a group aiming to amplify collaboration and communication amongst downtown business and property owners, and bring a new vibrancy to Sarnia's downtown core. Next slide, please. So starting starting the collective. Next slide. So attending here are the chairs of the collective. My name's Lillian Tang Smith. I'm with Tang's China House. Beside me is Brian Austin of the Imperial Theater. And then we have Mia Clark from the Tin Fiddler and Jordan Denemy from Homegrown Cannabis. Amy Spadafora was here from UE Inc., unfortunately had to leave due to time constraints. Next slide, please.
As Lillian mentioned, I'm Jordan Denemy of Homegrown Cannabis and one of the newer businesses downtown. I'm just going to go over the timeline that we have here with the collective. How the Downtown Collective started, starting October 2024, the collective grew organically out of a discussion that came from Victoria Street parking lot. In November, Carrie McEachran of the Chamber of Commerce took initiative to connect downtown businesses by going door to door and organizing our first meeting, regardless of chamber status. The chamber helped us get started and have been extremely supportive. But since that meeting, we have worked completely independently with, and will continue to do so. We've now had 4 meetings since then and have established a structure and vision for the collective to succeed going forward. The number of attendees continue to increase every meeting, and the excitement for collaboration has been extremely positive. Our next meeting is tomorrow, and will continue every first Tuesday of the month. One of our primary goals going forward will be to continue to reach out to invite more downtown businesses into the collective.
Next slide. And next slide, please. So that brings us to our mission, vision, and values. Next slide. Our mission is through creativity, collaboration, and inclusivity, we strive to make downtown a standout destination, reimagining our waterfront district as a vibrant hub that celebrates local culture, fosters community connections, and helps businesses thrive. Next slide. Our vision is to revitalize downtown as a cohesive, thriving destination by fostering communication between business and city council, transforming public perceptions, and creating a unified network for local businesses. Next slide, please. Through strategic marketing and shared sense of community, we aim to attract more visitors, rebuild a positive reputation, and encourage new business in an environment that will support long-term growth and sustainability for the downtown's economy. Our values include collaboration, inclusivity, unity, sustainability, advocacy, and engagement. We want to make downtown a destination for everyone to thrive. Next slide, please. So how we want to work together. We aim to collaborate with City Council to ensure alignment between downtown initiatives and municipal planning by maintaining open communication, providing insights on downtown's needs, and advocating for downtown revitalization. By collaborating with other organizations and supporting community events, beautification efforts, and economic growth, we can maximize resources and create a more vibrant, revitalized downtown. Next slide. And next slide, which brings us to our objectives. Our 3 main goals include, our first goal is to build strong communication network between business owners, the city, and the citizens of Sarnia. This will serve as our first building block, the essential step towards growth and success downtown. The second step is perception. The next step in our vision is revitalizing downtown's reputation through strategic branding, beautification efforts, safety improvements, and collective events. And our ultimate goal is to reestablish downtown as a premier destination, a diverse hub of arts, shopping, and culture that we are proud of, a place to live, visit, and explore. Next slide.
Okay, so I'll be taking you all through the structure that we've so far developed for the collective. If you could please go to the next slide. So to keep things simple, we've decided to align the collective borders with the already existing city-defined downtown zoning. So any business or property owner within this area that you see on the screen is welcome to participate as a member of the collective. The map isn't labeled, but it runs from Wellington Street to Derby Lane, up to Charlotte Street to Vital Street, and then all the way down to the waterfront. Next slide, please. Who can join? So as I just said, the only existing criteria to become a collective member is to either be a commercial property owner or a business owner within the defined area that we just showed. Membership is open to all who are interested in supporting the mission of the collective and aligning with its goals. Next slide. So how to join? Yes. So those who qualify and are interested in joining the collective can reach out to us directly via our email on the screen and request a copy of our application form. The application form is essentially acts as an initial opportunity for us to collect the submitting business's contact information, any areas of expertise, and gauge if they have any interest in subcommittees. The reviewing process, once the application is submitted, it will be reviewed by one of the chair members here, only to assure that the provided information is accurate, correct, and that the applicant meets all the necessary qualification. Mostly, we're just looking to make sure that the person or the business applying is within the proper location boundaries. Next slide. And then involvement levels. So once again, our main goal is really just to get as many downtown businesses involved and communicating as we possibly can. So to do that, we've tried to break down our involvement levels so that everyone can participate one way or another. So first off, we have the collective. So members of the collective are welcome at monthly meetings, have the right to vote in group-wide decisions, and will have access to each meeting minutes. So they're essentially subscribing to a communications newsletter, and if they're able to and are interested in attending the meetings, they're always welcome to, but it's not mandatory. Second, we're going to have subcommittees. So if you have additional time or a passion for a specific project, you can volunteer as a subcommittee member. These members take on additional responsibilities and are expected to attend more meetings related to their specific subcommittee work. At the moment, our umbrella subcommittees are improvements, events, and communications. As we move forward, ad hoc subcommittees will be formed within those based on projects and as needed. And then again, we have the collective chairs who are in this room right now. So chair members play a role within the collective. Their responsibilities include creating the agendas for the monthly meeting, providing guidance to subcommittees, drafting official communications on behalf of the collective. So from us to you or from us to the other collective members, initiating and maintaining communication with city and council, and chairs are expected to stay informed, actively participate, and attend meetings beyond regular monthly collective meetings. So that wraps up our structure. If you could please go to the next slide. We're just going to talk about who the collective is, and Lillian's going to finish that off for us.
Yes, so who are we? Next slide. So you can see from this slide, we have over 30 businesses, and that number is growing, as well as 4 property owners. Now, as Jordan mentioned earlier, we will continue our outreach and to touch base with every business we possibly can. And so far, so good. We haven't had any declines and very positive feedback. So we're looking forward to growing. Next slide. So that is the end of our presentation. Thank you again for your time. At this time, we'd like to invite any questions you might have about us.
Thank you very much to the group, and it was a pleasure to meet with you a couple of weeks ago and just to hear what your vision was of downtown and now sharing it with council. So I turn it open. Are there any questions from council? I am not seeing any.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And
Thank you for being presented.
we'll be talking a lot in the future, so thank you.
Sounds good. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks very much. Council, if we could turn to the regular correspondence. There's only a few items here. And the one is on the Sarnia Sting, the agreement with the Passes Center looking for direction. Councillor White, you're moving the direction. Councillor Burrell, you're seconding. All those in favor? Okay, that'll be back to you. Next is, can I ask the clerk, we do this every year. Do we have to do it every year? Can we just make it for the rest of the term? This is the dredging in Sarnia, in the Sarnia Yacht Club Basin.
Yeah, council would be within its right to extend that noise bylaw exemption for the remainder of this term if it so wished.
It's only a short period of time, right? And it's necessary.
That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Kilner, Councillor Burrell, you're moving it for the rest of the term? Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Sorry, before we get there, Mayor Bradley, I wonder, how does that work in future years? Just for all of our knowledge, do we get a notification period? Or do the neighbors get a notification period of when that's going to happen in future years, like before the term is over?
Yeah, I think that can be easily arranged next year, that we give you the circulation so council knows and the community knows. So all in favor? That is done. Last is an application to the Canadian Public Transit Fund Active Program. Looking for Councillor Kilner, Councillor Vandenberg. Discussion? Councillor, any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That is done. Moving on, I have a notice of motion to you, which is asking staff to present to us a Canadian First procurement policy for goods and services. Councillor Vandenberg, Councillor Kilner, any discussion? Councillor Burrell?
Yes, Your Worship. I hate to move too quickly on things based upon President Trump's things. We've had long-standing relationships with many things in the U.S. We know he's only going to be there 4 years. And this Canadian First, I'm not sure what that'll mean. I would assume when we buy things, we buy what's most, not necessarily always the cheapest, but the best bang for the buck, whether it's from Canada, from the U.S., from Europe, or from wherever. But I would hate to put in a regulation that would make Canada be the first, to the extent that it costs us more money than what we could get reasonably elsewhere. So I'm not sure where exactly this is intended, because I'm assuming that if we got to pay 25% extra from anything coming from the States, we probably wouldn't buy it there anyways, unless it was the only place we could get it. So I would like a little more knowledge of what this intent is.
Well, the intent is clear. This is simply to look at, and I understand from looking into it, that the amount of out of Canada, the U.S. purchases is quite low by the city. And I think that's the case that most Canadian cities are finding out. This simply would bring it back to you to decide if you want to make some adjustments. And as of tomorrow, we'll have a much clearer understanding, hopefully, of what's going on with the tariffs. But it's simply to advance that so we're prepared if we want to move in that direction. Councillor Dennis?
Through you, Worship, Mayor Bradley, to Councillor Burrell, this sort of thing is nothing new, not on the Canadian side, but on the American side. After the fiasco in 2008, when Barack Obama became president and they announced a bailout plan, there was Buy American provisions in that that bailout plan. And then Trump introduced Buy American in his bailout plan. Biden did the same thing, and then pardon my language. No, this is this. I support this 100%. As a matter of fact, I buy Canadian 100%. I'd even like to take it further, that we if we can buy Sarnia and use Sarnia services as much as we can too as well. So you know what, this is not radical, and they're radical what they're doing. So it's about time we take care of ourselves. I couldn't care less about offending them at this point. They've done everything they can to offend us. So you know what, this is right on. That's good for you for putting this through.
I got Councillor Kilner and I got Councillor Gillis, and then I'll call the question to Councillor Boushy.
Thanks, Mayor Bradley. I will echo what Councillor Dennis has just said. Although I will, the word radical, radix from Latin, rooted. This is rooted in our Canadian background, who we are. I think this motion is meant to not limit us, but actually just to prioritize that we're going to start in Canada, that we're going to start because money that's spent here gets spread around our local economy and our provincial economy and our national economy. So this is good money to spend here in Canada. And a lot of that money ends up, because it's not in the hands of billionaires, it ends up actually being spent on diapers, on groceries, on eggs, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a very good approach. I don't think it necessarily excludes us. Is that true, Mayor Bradley, that it doesn't exclude us, it just prioritizes?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So I will support.
I've got Councillor Gillis and Councillor Boushy, then I'll call the question.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was very glad to see you bring this forward. I wish we had brought it forward a little bit earlier, particularly when we were looking at the fire truck. That purchase that will be in 30 months and perhaps have escalated far beyond what we agreed to, seeing as no agreement seemed to be sacred or sacrosanct at this point in time. So I think we have to look at ourselves, we have to protect ourselves, and we have to buy Canadian. And we have to reflect what is happening right across the country. When people are making those sacrifices, they're going to the grocery store, they're buying Canadian, and this is another way that we, as municipalities, as leaders, can build up on that positive energy that's out there from the Canadian public. Certainly as a border town, we're sending a message. And I realize that other communities are going to be doing the same thing. So we're just consolidating as Canadians to buy Canadian, but particularly from the procurement policy, goods and services. That's where we can make our mark. It was mentioned by Mr. Ford during the election. It was mentioned by several premiers across the country. And this is the direction that Canada is going in. And hopefully we'll get those trade barriers down between provinces so that we can do even more. So thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Boushy, then I'll call the question.
Just that this is to say we need to buy Canadians, and we don't like the challenge on 25% or 20% on tariff on the border. We're not doing it alone. We're asking you to join the rest of the county, the rest of the country, and the rest of the people we know and we appreciate. And I hope this will work very well.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Councillor White, before I call the question.
Sorry, just adding my voice to the masses here, and I think that's what we're doing across the country from coast to coast to coast. People, whether we're small business owners or we're simply, residents looking to our leaders, as well as the municipalities, we're all standing shoulder to shoulder here, united in a way like we've never been before. And whether we're leading the pack on this one or we're, stepping forward alongside everybody else, it's a critical message that we're going to send that way when we do have changes of provincial and federal governments over the next little while across the country. It's very clear where municipalities stand. So I appreciate the motion, and obviously I'm going to support this 100%.
All those in favor of the question? That's unanimous. Thank you, including my own vote. Councillor Dennis, you have a notice of motion, and then we'll go to the minutes and move on to the rest of the agenda.
Sure. Thank you. My motion is as follows. That Sarnia City Council directs staff to expand the notification radius to a minimum of 240 meters for any planning matters to ensure a more complete community, neighborhood, and business consultation for any planning matters. If I have a seconder, I'd like to offer a few comments. Thank you.
Councillor Kellner, seconded.
Thank you very much. This current motion is a further up to my work to ensure a more complete and thorough community, neighborhood, and business consultation in any planning matters. This motion came about because of complaints from the public who were never notified about planning changes would significantly affect their homes and livelihoods. In my research, I do not see where any other city uses a number as low as 60 meters for notification, as we do currently for some matters. To be clear, 60 meters means a notification radius of less than 200 feet. This is far too small of a distance. For further perspective, the typical city block in Ontario is 250 to 300 meters. So this means Sarnia only notifies the public for much less than a block of coverage. No wonder we are getting complaints. I understand that Brampton uses 240 meters. I also did further research and found that the Markham area expanded their notification to 200 meters, and that Oakville Council was asking to increase their notification radius to also 240 meters. We need to err on the side of public input, because our citizens deserve to have a voice. Our radius needs to be expanded to offer better serve our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley, and thank you for the motion. Agree with it in all of its meaning. I wonder though if we're missing a small part of it, and perhaps staff can respond. Are we still excluding tenants of commercial properties? At this point, my understanding is that we're still only notifying property owners, which leaves a large number of the occupants of those plazas and other business commercial properties out. And if that's the case, then I would ask my colleague to make a friendly amendment to include tenants, commercial tenants of all properties as well.
I'd be happy to. That's a very good point.
Yeah, I have a question to staff though. Having gone through this, you might recall a few years ago, I got you to expand the industrial area related to residential. Do you have access? And this is what's happened with, it happened at Northgate, where the landlord did not pass on the information to the tenants. We had the same issues downtown that some of you may recall, the tenants never finding out. Do you have the ability to get that information to tenants?
Through your worship, to mayors of, through your worship, to members of council, we do. It's a different layer. We don't have direct access to control over the tenant layer. We pull it from MPAC and other sources. So it's a matter of purchasing that layer, just understanding what the data updates are. So it may not always be perfectly current. It isn't impossible. It's another step. Just to clarify under the notification as well, I just don't want any misinformation in the public. The Planning Act prescribes the standard setbacks is 120 meters for rezoning and official plan amendment applications, and it is 60 meters for committee of adjustment applications. And in fact, the Planning Act has a provision to allow that to actually go lower to 30 meters, with the idea that it really is just meant to intended to focus the planning actual impacts on those immediate adjacent properties that are directly impacted. The bigger piece, just parking the actual mailed notice aside, is what we also prescribe here is required signage on the property. So under their normal day-to-day, anybody who is within that immediate vicinity, should really, if it is of interest in that location, will have a very big visual on their property, depending on the type of application. But it's not just the mail out, it's also signage that's required. And there's also a mandatory posting in the newspaper, which we appreciate has been parodying off in recent years. But those are mainly the methods for notification.
Okay, so I'm taking that as a friendly amendment to that motion. I've got Councillor McRoberts and Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, through the chair. I thought when we discussed the Northgate issue that I had made a motion that all the business owners, whether they were a tenant or the owner, were going to be notified in certain areas, and that Councillor Dennis had seconded that.
I remember that, yeah.
All right, can please go to the clerk for clarification on that.
We just need a moment to look it up, but I can get back to council during this session if you'd like me to locate the history.
And I got Councillor Burrell, if you want to go ahead then.
Yes, I would like to see a differentiation for the different levels of involvement for minor variances and things like that. I don't think we need the 240 meters. For example, a few years ago, one of my neighbors cut off a piece of their backyard and added it to my other neighbor's backyard, and I don't think that had anybody's interest, didn't even have my interest, but we were within a very small distance for that. So there are some minor things that we may be creating a big headache for our people, and it's not really necessary. So I would like some stratification of that, and maybe staff could advise us on where the layers should be, if that's possible.
Can I make a suggestion that we just table and have that come back? Because I can tell you, when you say you're going to consult on everything, there are things you may not need to, as you've just indicated.
Yeah, that makes good sense. What kind of started it was, if you recall, when we were talking about the Germain Park neighbors, some mentioned that they didn't get noticed. When we were doing the rezoning for that property off of West Spencer Gate, but that was during the mail strike, and people probably got their notice, but they just didn't think enough to go to their mailbox because they figured that there was no mail anyway. So yeah, like that's what was kind of the brainchild of this motion. So, but I understand you're all making very good points. But I just in my research, I just noticed that we seem very, very short compared to everybody else. But you're all making good points with respect to there's no sense notifying the whole block over something very, very minor. It just could be getting people riled up over something that really is not a big concern to them.
Okay, so I would accept a motion to table to come back to a future meeting just with some definitions.
Sure.
The key issues, but also the issues maybe we don't need to do the same thing.
Yeah.
We could get that motion. Councillor Dennis, Councillor White, all in favor?
That's a good point.
That is done. Thank you. Moving forward into the minutes, Councillor Burrell.
Yes. Let's see here.
There's quite a series of them. You can move them as a bundle if you like.
Just trying to find them here. Let's see them on my sheet here.
It's the minutes of the 27th. Special
I'm
meeting.
sorry. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I move that the minutes of January 27, 2025 special meeting, January 27, 2025 special closed meeting, February 10, 2025 regular meeting, and February 10, 2025 closed meeting as printed be adopted.
All those in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Moving on to urgent business. I have one item I sent to you the other day, which is the new Canadian Border Alliance group, looking for your support to come forward and fund that as we work together. Councillor Kilner, Councillor White, any discussion? And I will give you regular reports back as we work our way through this. Councillor Burrell.
Just a question, and I probably know the answer, but included in this group, is there correspondence with municipalities that would be sort of our partners, our hands across the border kind of thing? Like, is some of this stuff going to say, for example, to Port Huron or Port Rashes or some of those places that, are sort of, so we can sort of keep the communication maybe going not only north-south, but east-west and all that good stuff?
This group is brand new with Councillor Burrell, and we're working our way through it. We have been asked to reach out to our colleagues across the river. I had an exchange in writing with the Mayor of Port Huron last week, and we are strategizing. We meet once a week, late in the afternoons, and that will come as we move forward. We also have the other group, which I'm just hearing from, the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Initiative, which has been around for a long time. And you may remember that we hosted their big convention here back in 2014, 2015. That is elected mayors and other people from both sides of the border. We did have a meeting a month ago. I can tell you it was a bit terse. We're just trying to work our way through, but we're environmentally focused, but they have sent a resolution to the White House, and I will get a copy and get that to you also. So there is a whole bunch of things going on at the same time, and I don't think any of it hurts, even if it's a bit, sometimes we do things twice. So that's where it's at. So I could call the question. Those in favor? That's done. Thank you. That's unanimous. All right.
Mayor, can I?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, thank you, sir. I'm throwing myself at the mercy of council. I sent everybody a kind of a last minute motion, and I was hoping to present it under urgent matters, if that's okay. You all got a copy of it. If I don't know what the process is for this, if I can have council's permission to do so.
I need 5 people to say that in a vote according to the rules. Otherwise, I take it as a notice of motion for the next meeting.
Well, it's too late for the next meeting, sir.
Well, it could have been, I guess, to this meeting, but let me call. If we've got 5 colleagues that say they want to hear it, then we'll move forward. But those in favor? That's done. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Given the advent of the Trump tariffs and the economic impact on Canadians, it is even more critical at this time to petition our own federal government to put a stop to the 20% increase to the carbon tax scheduled to be implemented April 1st, 2025. The vast majority of Canadians do not support this carbon tax, and the timing could not be worse for the impact to our citizens. This motion, unfortunately, cannot wait until the next meeting, which is March 30th, 2025, given the implementation of April 1st. If successful, I would ask that we forward this resolution to our Prime Minister, his cabinet, leaders of opposition, our MP, and all Ontario municipalities. Thank you.
Anything further? I'll call the question. Those in favor? That is done. That just reinforces a previous position we took a year or two ago. Thank you. Moving forward.
Was that Pastor?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you. I have two subjects I'd like to speak to. We have signs throughout Sarnia that say blind child or deaf child at play, but what we don't have is anything for adults. And I have a gentleman that came to me that has recently suffered an issue with his eyes, and now he is legally, beyond legally blind. He is on the borderline of any vision. And he can't drive. He has no way to get to transportation other than walking on the sidewalk to the first major roadway where there's going to be a bus stop. And what we have are individuals not shoveling their sidewalks, which is dangerous for him. He had to walk on the road, which now there's no signs in the neighborhood to let people know that this man with the white cane may not be able to see how he's navigating. Is it possible to direct staff to find out what it would cost for a sign for him, and if there are other individuals in this same predicament? I understand some people are married or they have a partner that can get them around and they're looked after, but if you're older or you're single and you're stuck in this predicament, that's an issue. And that these individuals have the city skid steer clean their sidewalk, because again, we don't have people that are being neighborly and looking after their own property on their sidewalk. So if we could direct staff, if we can vote on.
Yeah, Councillor Kilner seconding your motion.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Can I also add to that, Mayor Bradley? So to Councillor McRoberts' concern as well, I know I regularly interact with seniors and people with dementia and so on in this community who would like to have a map. They're still able to get out of the house, perhaps not like a winter like we've had, but in most other seasons, they're able to leave the house and get themselves from point A to point B. But there are a whole bunch of sidewalks in this community that don't have ramps. And to have an actual map of that would be incredibly helpful for people to be able to pre-map, especially when they're just going 500 meters to a kilometer. So this just kind of, there's a bunch of accessibility pieces to me, in my mind anyway, that could really, really help people, including snow removal and having plans for that. So that's why I'm seconding it, because I think it can move us in that direction. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. What I was going to add to this, there are signs up in the city that have been up for decades that are totally outdated by who lives in the neighborhoods. So I think you need to take a look at all those signs over the years that were put up about deaf child at play, etc. Because obviously times have changed and what person's no longer probably in the neighborhood. So anyhow, this is a good idea. Just let's take a look at it and maybe update it and bring the accessibility committee into this discussion. Would that be also appropriate to the movement sector? Okay, thank you.
I have a second.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, I've got Councillor Dennis wants to speak to your motion, and then I'll come back.
Oh, there was another issue, sir, I wanted to bring up, but Councillor McRoberts.
Okay, well, let me call the question on the what Councillor McRoberts has posed, seconded by Councillor Kilner. All those in favor? That's done. Councillor McRoberts, you had another issue?
Thank you. I'd like to piggyback off of your motion about the Canadian First Procurement Policy. In our, when we reach out and we've got our tender process, I understand that we're going for the cheapest price, but now that we're making it a very local thing, can we agree to adjust that if someone that is local and not necessarily London or Toronto that's going to do some excavating or whatever, that if they come within a 1.5% of that person that should win the tender, that we give it to our local. They have to be within, we can't be saying 10% cheaper, but come up with a percentage, maybe 1.5% or 2%, and say that if somebody local could come that close, that we prefer our local people over someone outside of town.
Yeah, I would suggest you be really careful where you're going on this. There was an instance where we asked, it was a huge contract, we asked for local content, And guess what? They opened a small one-person office that existed for 3 months.
Oh.
And so whatever we do, let's just be careful that we make it so it just doesn't become an easy way for big companies to get into Sarnia and do business by not doing very little to be in Sarnia. So, Ms. Councillor, you had something to say?
Through the mayor to council, I was turning my camera on in case any members of council had a specific question for me, but to answer Councillor McRoberts' inquiry, we can certainly touch on that in the report that will be coming to council to address buying local options.
That would be appreciated. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Dennis, and then I'm going to move on to the consent agenda.
Just one thing I wanted to make mention of, and I know that staff, or the Sarnia Works employees are working very, very hard, and they should be commended. A number of people have reached out to me about the number of potholes in town, and I assured them that the workers are out doing their best to fill the potholes and that, and I'm sure Mr. Jackson and his team are out there doing their best, and they probably can't keep up with them. There's so many, but I promised people that I would bring this up during this period. Can maybe Mr. Jackson speak to that right now if he's online, or someone? They're probably aware of this right now, but I've been inundated with calls from people complaining about the potholes that inevitably pop up this time of year because of the snow and all the crazy weather we've been having.
Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, through to Mayor to Council, it is pothole season. There's a lot of work out there to do. We are actually planning to do a bit of public messaging right now. We have some good news. We are getting a second hot box. We had great success with that last year. Still there's, it doesn't solve the problem tomorrow, but our staff are working extra right now. We're kind of preparing for our spring blitz at the moment. And so we'll be doing some messaging on that. And we know that the problem's there, and we're working to fix it as quick as we can.
And I know you guys are working hard.
Thank you. And if you look at every town and city, it's the same issue. So I'm glad you're on top of it. Councillor Vandenberg.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on that note, if you could fix the pothole at McCree and Cathcart, it'd be nice. Just around the corner from me. Anyway, Your Worship, in the previous council, I asked about increasing the fines for the trucks that were going off the 402 coming down Exmouth Street in Michigan. And over the last few weeks, we've seen the backups down to as far as the airport, and trucks sneaking through the city, and the city police doing a good job last week of charging them. Still charging them at $200 instead of the $400 this council approved. I'm just wondering, where are we with the approval from the Chief Justice of Ontario, getting these fines up?
Laura? I would agree with the councillor. The fines do not, it's now just a cost of doing business. So where are we at on that, and what can we do to, following up on the councillor, what can we do to see if we can get their attention to upgrade the fines?
Through the mayor to council, I can certainly look into where we're at on that and report back as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you. Moving on, Councillor Burrell, to the consent agenda. I do want to note on the consent agenda, if by any chance you want to do anything on item B, which is related to the Women's Interval Home in Germain Park, there are people from the Interval Home online if you need to ask them any questions. With that, let's go to the consent agenda.
I move that item A to M listed in the consent agenda be introduced.
All in favor? Any items for the consent agenda? Councillor McRoberts.
I would like to speak to Mr. Jackson's report on the engineering and operations for the low-speed vehicles in the parks.
Please go ahead.
Where do we stand as far as scooters, the electric scooters that go no faster than, I believe it's 38 kilometers, and that's only if it was a 10-pound person and a strong wind behind them. Are they allowed to ride in our parks and on our paths? I know we spoke about Watson Trail, but along the waterfront, as long as they are doing a minimum speed, like a maximum speed of whatever, a little faster than a pedestrian and being safe. Is that allowed in our city bylaws?
Through the Mayor Council, I'll have to confirm. I don't believe they can go on our parks, and I believe to go on roads, we would have to kind of opt into a provincial program. But I'll have to report back on the details.
If we, because we have a lot of students, myself, individuals that are using this as a cheaper form of transportation to avoid purchasing a vehicle. And there are requirements with a helmet, headlight, brake lights, blinker lights, etc. But this is something that we need. So deciding whether we're supposed to be on the sidewalk, on a path, or on the road, to know that that is something that Sarnia can step up and start doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Burrell, can you move us forward?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Councillor
Yes,
Gillis.
I move.
Sorry, Councillor Burrell. Councillor Gillis has now got her hand up.
And Councillor White as well. I wanted to come back to agenda item B with regard to the women's interval home. This information that came forward was basically to identify or try to identify any suitable surplus land. And with that in mind, I was wondering, when is this coming back to us, or is it up to the Women's Interval Home Organization to find what is needed to suit their needs and then come back to us?
My understanding was that council asked for this. Last September, you passed a motion looking to donate city land.
Right.
The report back and the Women's Interval Home looked at that particular site, and they looked at a number of sites. I think it was up to 9. They came back and liked the site that is by the Strangway Center. So this is back to you for information today, and it's now up to council to decide if you want to put it to a future meeting, what you want to do with this information.
Then I would like to make a motion that we put this to our, I think it's March 31st meeting. I hope it is, because March 30th, I'm flying from Calgary.
Actually, it is March 30th, Councillor Gillis.
Councillor, I could take it as a notice of motion to deal with the issue on that date, and I will take that if you wish.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor McRoberts, Councillor Vandenberg, Councillor White.
Is it possible on the list of places that the city staff have put on that for possible locations, can we add Avondale Park? That's the one that I was trying to suggest for supportive housing. We've got 2 apartment buildings there. That's not heavily utilized, and it would be approximately the exact same size as what we're looking at to go at Germain. So is it possible to add that piece of property to the list?
Council can do that. I just want to remind you that it was the Women's Interval Home that came up with this location. And, you know, do we have the expertise to determine what they want? I'm not disagreeing with your suggestion. Well, let me make it simple. I believe a couple of the people from the home are online right now. Can we bring them on, Andrew? I believe the chair of the board was there. The consultant, Tim Welch, might be available.
Yep, one moment.
And just for clarification, I have a calendar here in front of me. March 31st is Monday. March 30th is Sunday.
Right,
thank you.
All right.
Just so you know.
Sorry, we do have a rep from the Allison's here from the Women's Interval Home, and the consultant. The chair of the board's here. You've heard the questions. You're still focused on the site that was pushed back to this meeting, or you've heard another suggestion. What is it that you want at this point?
We are still committed to the site by Strangway Center. However, we can't commit between now and the next meeting to look at the Avondale Park site. I'm not sure. I didn't have that in my list of items that we had looked at, but I'll ask.
It wasn't on the list.
Okay. Wasn't on the list. Okay. Yep. I think that that's something that we could look at.
Okay, Councillor White, are you moving to table this to the next meeting then? I'm taking
yes.
as a notice of motion or whatever, just that we've on paper, we've taken this list, we've added one, and we're going to move it to the next regular meeting.
Thank you.
That's what the notice of motion was.
Yeah. I just want to make sure it's understood.
Ask a question.
So a question for the proponents then.
Go ahead.
If I may at this time. So on the list of unavailable or I can't remember what it was classified as, conditionally unavailable, properties was the site of the current Humane Society, and my understanding is that was a potential option for you that you had indicated. So does that remain of interest to you? And then I do have a question for staff then following your response.
Yeah, I would say that that would still be one of the options that we would be considering. And I'm seeing Mia from our consulting firm also nodding, and our board chair nodding as well. So that would be something that we could look at again as well. It is something that we have already inquired about. And to my understanding, it wasn't something that was going to be available for this project, but we can revisit that. Or maybe Randy might have more information on that.
Okay, so I do that. Thank you for that. And so then my question to staff is, what is making it conditionally unavailable? I assume it's currently occupied. That's part of it, but you can certainly respond to that. But I will also add that, you know, previously council had approved a second footprint adjacent to that property that is currently being used for the reconstruction of a new Humane Society, so that one could move to the new facility and then deconstruct the current building. So it seems to me like we do have space available there, whether it's the current footprint or the one that council had previously approved for the new Humane Society site. So with that understanding, would you please speak to what's making it conditionally unavailable?
Through the mayor to council, the western portion of that property is still occupied by the Sarnia District Humane Society. There are no notices at this current time to terminate their current agreement, so that piece remains unavailable. The rest of the parcel does remain within Centennial Park, and so parkland was included in our interactive map as land that was conditionally unavailable. I did speak with the Women's Interval Home of Sarnia Lambton about this particular site, and we did discuss options moving forward, including due diligence and soil testing and that type of thing. But we were waiting to determine what was going to happen with the current Humane Society property before exploring that option further.
Okay, so just to follow up then, do we still have a clear indication of what the previously approved site looked like, or that footprint for what was at the time proposed to be the new Humane Society adjacent to the current one? And does that remain parkland and or available?
Through the mayor to council, I can certainly bring up a map identifying that specific parcel, and I can share that with the Women's Interval Home to discuss that piece. My understanding is it is currently zoned as waterfront, but would have permitted a Humane Society type operation. So we'll explore the planning aspect of that as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vandenberg, Councillor McRoberts.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. In relation to Councillor White's inquiries, as a board member of the Humane Society and the former president, it is not our intention to move next door to the existing facility. It is our intention to move to the extension of Wellington Street just east of Molan Road. We have purchased property and we're all aware of what's going on. So our intention is to get this building built as soon as we can. And so that building will become vacant as soon as we're into the new facility, which hopefully will be sometime next year.
There you go.
I do want to remind council that that location is also designated as one of the places that might be used for other interests that would help fund our waterfront plans. There was 4 locations that you were advised of, and that's one of them.
Exactly.
Okay, so where are we at right now, Madam Clerk?
Chair.
We've got the notice of motion for the next meeting. Councillor
Yes.
McRoberts.
Thank you. My only concern with the location at Germain, as I understand, some of these lovely women may have some form of PTSD or whatever may have driven them to have to stay at the shelter. Aircraft landing at the airport and the sirens going from the fire hall, regardless of where in Germain, that's going to be happening all the time with these sirens flying by. Is that something that is not maybe going to be an issue because it's never ending? I've got friends that live in the neighborhood. Did that ever get included in how you were picking where you want it to be?
Actually, that wasn't part of the discussion, but I think it's definitely something that we can add into the mix, just to make sure that we're considering that, given the proximity to the fire department and the hospital.
It would be devastating to build there, and then that's what happens. Yeah.
We can definitely look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So that'll be at the next meeting.
Yes.
Councillor Burrell, can you move us forward on the consent agenda? And then also on the bylaws, the first two bylaws were not passed, or should not be passed because council did not move forward on them. So if you could take out bylaw 1 and 2, but let's do the consent agenda, just wrap it up.
I move that items A to M listed in the consent agenda as recommended or approved by this council be adopted.
All in favor? Now the bylaws, Councillor.
I just wanted, so you're saying 1 and 2 did not make it?
The council did not pass that rezoning on Exmouth Street, so those bylaws were on the agenda to move forward, and since we didn't pass them, those items do not need to be passed as bylaws.
Okay, so I move that bylaws 3 to 6 as printed be introduced and be taken as read for the first, second, and third time, and finally passed.
All in favor? That's done. Okay, take us home.
I move that Sarnia City Council adjourn to its next regular meeting to be held on Monday, March 31, 2025.
Seconded, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, all in favor? Done. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for your participation today. We'll see you soon.
Thank